Hello friends, my name is Moneyness, and this is the start of a reading vlog and a month-long project, I think. As it stands, I am more or less at my Goodreads goal, my yearly goal of 72 books. I say more or less because I've been really bad at tracking my reading this year, and so there's a bunch of stuff that I still haven't logged in Goodreads, but that I have like jotted down and things. So I think I'm about at 72 books, which is amazing considering that there were a couple of months in the spring as the pandemic started that I didn't read much of anything. So I am so happy with that. And then I got to thinking about how I could end this year with a bang and maybe reach 100 books for the second year ever in a row. I've seen lots of people do this challenge, and I always thought it sounded really interesting and like a good way to challenge myself. So I'm going to attempt to read 30 books in 31 days. I say this not quite believing in myself or not quite believing that I can do it. However, I figured that even if I fail spectacularly and read like 15 books in 31 days, 15 books is still a really great reading month for me. And I think the point is just going to be to push myself to read as much as I can, make sure that I'm reading every day, to log this, I guess, and take you guys along on this challenge for the month. We'll see in about a week or two how it goes. I have a feeling that because I read multiple books at a time that I'm going to be like behind and then finish off a bunch of stuff so that I'll like jump up like buy books at a time, but we'll see how this goes. If you see this first part of this vlog, it means that it went well enough for like the first week that I decided to make it public. I think I'm going to start with the Fairyland series. I think that rereading an old favorite and getting through it quickly will be a nice boost in terms of like just the numbers, but also like my reading, like, I don't know, stamina and mojo to be like, ooh, look, I've already got 5 books. Wish me luck. I know that this is absolutely nothing for everybody who is not a South Floridian, but it is currently 68 degrees inside of my apartment with no AC on, so I'm like thriving. Yesterday, I ended up just really working and being on Twitter and in group chats because like a few things went down on Twitter yesterday. It was like one of those Twitter days, but I did finish my first book, The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making by Catherynne and Valente. This is like my 7th time reading this, I want to say. This was really wonderful and easy to get through. It's like coming home. There are so many like moments that I look forward to and quotes that I look forward to. It is like magical and whimsical and wordy and description heavy, and there's so many like lovely characters and creatures in this. I think that the more and more I read it, the more and more like the part with the soap column becomes my favorite part, and it is something that I think about all the time, sort of like, you know, this whimsical idea of having to scrub up your courage and wash off your dreams is something that I think about in more practical terms. Like I always now think about like checking in with where my dreams are and sort of like dusting off my courage for certain things. 5 out of 5 stars. I also started the second book, which is amazing, and I got 100 and almost 30 pages in, which I think is a little more than halfway. So I will definitely finish the second book today. So I'm like right on track, and I want to start something that's not Fairyland. So I would like to get through a portion of Take a Hint, Danny Brown today is kind of my plan. But your girl is on track on day 2. You're getting your first after work smudgy face update because it was that kind of super busy day at work today. But I did finish reading The Girl Who Fell Beneath Fairyland and Led the Revels there last night, which is the second book in the Fairyland series, where the first book was exploring like a lot of classic fairy tale like tropes and introducing us to a lot of characters. The second book is a lot about like light and dark and those sorts of themes, and then also September, our main character, growing up and how it changes her relationships with her friends. And the story has a lot to do with like adventures with her friends, but the moments that she also has to adventure alone and go it alone and sort of deal with the consequences of her own actions. So I just I love it. I wanted to give you an update, but like that's like the general update as I'm rereading through all of this, is that I love it. The other thing is that yesterday I was like, I'll start, take a hint, Danny Brown, but your girl has chronic memory problems when it comes to the books I'm supposed to be reading for freaking book club. And book club is this Saturday, and we're discussing Addie LaRue. So I need to have this book done by Saturday. I just sat here and I read the first part of it, so 94 pages. And I'd like to say that I'm going to read part 2 before I go to sleep tonight, but I'm not disliking this. It is very pretty in a lot of ways, and I love the setup of what has happened to Addie and how she's gotten herself in the situation where like she lives forever and nobody remembers her. And a lot of the metaphors and things are just really nice writing. Right now, however, it is slow, and because we're at the beginning of the book, it's kind of slow for no reason. It's very uneven and all over the place. Again, I'm not disliking it. It's just hard to sit here and sort of binge because it hasn't necessarily gripped me as of yet. I'm hopeful that it will reach a place where like the fullness of the experience will be like a I didn't mind that it was slow sort of thing, but I'm not quite there yet. What I'm gonna do is take a little break here from reading this to continue to watch His Dark Materials. I am rewatching the first season, and I think there are already 3 episodes of season 2 up, but I wanted to rewatch the first season before I got there. So I'm gonna watch a couple of those episodes before calling it a night, and then maybe reading more of Addie LaRue if I'm feeling especially well behaved. I don't know if this has been like super crooked the whole time, but you know, just watch it with your head tilted. I'm tired. A lot of you guys know that early on in the pandemic, I was working from home for a little bit at the job that I had been at for nearly 4 years, and then they did some layoffs and I lost my job. So the summer was difficult for me because I was like unemployed, didn't have money, really worried about like, you know, being able to live and afford life, and then also inside all of the time with absolutely nothing to do. But I'm super grateful and very lucky that I was able to find another job relatively quickly. And so I'm at a job currently that is also mostly working from home. I have to sometimes go into the office or visit some of the locations where I do HR for, but for the most part, I'm here still in my apartment. Even throughout the summer when I had absolutely nowhere to be and nothing to do, I gave myself like one thing that I wanted to maintain, and that was every morning getting up and like taking a shower and getting dressed in some way. Not like super fancy, but at least like leggings and a t-shirt, just making sure that I maintain that semblance of routine. Every other routine, especially during the summer, was absolutely done for. I had no eating schedule, had no sleeping schedule. It was wild. And even now, like some of those things are different than they were even, you know, back in March or whatnot. But I still try to maintain this thing that I get up, I take a shower, and I get dressed for the day. Some days, like today, however, like I'm just too tired or have to be up extra early for some work thing, and I end up like rolling out of bed and plopping down in front of my work computer like as crusty as God made me, and just like getting a few hours of work done, of productivity. Today was such a day. I was so freaking tired this morning. I just could not even. And we've been dealing with a work thing all week that has been like supremely frustrating. And all of my time has been dedicated to this thing. So I just like rolled out of bed. And now that it is around noontime, I was like, oh, like let me, you know, do the thing, let me eat something also. And I ended up getting, this whole story is to tell you that I'm having breakfast right now. I have Brooklyn water bagels, and I ordered a bagel. It's like 1 o'clock. Anyway, the other thing that I did while I was like getting ready, ordering food during my lunch break or whatnot, was finish listening to an audiobook. So I listened to Apple by Eric Gansworth, and this is an audiobook that I had already started. I was halfway through, so I'll do the calculations for the page counts, but I finished the second half of this audio between last night and my lunch break today, and this was really, really fantastic. It is a memoir told in verse, and in that way, it reminded me a lot of Jacqueline Woodson's Brown Girl Dreaming. That is, you know, just for the memoir verse sort of comparison or whatnot. But Eric Gansworth tells a story of growing up specific to his like identities and tribes, but also like on a larger scale talking about like indigenous identity. And it was just really, really thoughtful and lyrical. This is a really interesting work in general because of the way that it's formatted. Some of it reads more like poetry and some of it reads more like prose. And obviously I'm listening to it, so I don't really know how it's broken down kind of on page, but also he has a lot of ties and callbacks to the Beatles as something that has influenced him. So you get a lot of those references as well. Apple Records was the Beatles record company, but Apple is also a slur that is used to call an indigenous person that, you know, people say are red on the outside and white on the inside. In this work, Gansworth sort of explores that in terms of identity, but also this idea of being white on the inside and the work that the US government has done to strip indigenous nations of their identities. He has 3 of his 4 grandparents that went to boarding schools that were specifically for the purposes of assimilating. So you see that how that effect has trickled down to his generation, but the way that there is this claiming back of identities and histories, and he also explores that in kind of taking back the word apple. So all of this was just really, really thoughtful. And he starts this by sort of explaining this like conceit, but also by very clearly saying like, this book isn't for everybody. Like, this is my story and I'm going to tell it. And it just, that, you know, I don't know, I felt that really heavy throughout in terms of this just being like really vulnerable and open and honest and almost disjointed in the way it was like exploring his memories. So to even like, I don't know, review it on that, like, well, you know, it was a little disconnected. Like he told me this story was not for me and I still had like the honor of listening to it. I would love, especially after listening to his like liner notes about like the pictures and art that are included in the book itself, like I would love to go back and read this as a physical copy. I think I would gain a lot from the additional things that he has included from seeing the format as well and sort of understanding what is prose versus poetry and whatnot. But this was really wonderful, highly recommended for anybody who enjoys memoirs. This is pitched as sort of like a young adult memoir, which I understand it has a lot of themes of coming of age and identity, but I think it also has a lot of adult themes, and given his age and sort of like his cultural touchstones, I would think that an adult audience would also really enjoy this. So if you enjoy memoirs, I would recommend this. If you enjoy novels in verse, I would recommend this. And I would also recommend this if you're looking to read more from indigenous authors. I think I'm going to end up giving this like 4 out of 5 stars, but it will also sit with me for a while until I kind of really process like the whole experience. Now onto this, I have to finish it by 7 p.m. tomorrow Eastern time, and I have that much to go. So I will be listening to this until I finish it. I say that. I will be listening to this, and if I need a break, I'm going to try and watch TV versus starting another book so I can just dedicate all of my reading time to this. And I'm gonna have my breakfast. I just have to run to work or an emergency something, so happy Friday night. Your girl was real tired when I finally got back home from working, and I decided to order some food and do an impromptu live show. So you can catch that on my channel. To be honest, it was because I was talking in the group chat with House Salt about like consequences and what that actually means as people are demanding consequences for Sasha. And I was like, you know what? This would be an excellent thing to talk about. And I was just going to do it myself, like on a live show, and talk a little bit about like what I was currently reading, but I bullied Paige into joining me. So we talk about that, about like sort of the Sasha thing. I mean, we do talk about it in specific terms, but the bigger idea that I wanted to get at was like this idea of like consequences and also like apologies and taking breaks from social media and some of the other things that we see when people mess up online. So that's up. It's an hour and 15 minutes of me and my friend Paige having feelings about this, and it is now 11 p.m. because I sat here after the live show and we talked a little bit, and then I just was like watching BookTube and scrolling through Twitter. So happy Friday indeed. I have not read any more of this, but I'm not like worried. I'll finish it tomorrow. I am so proud of myself. So, I mean, last night I went to sleep a little later than I would have. Like, I intended to just go pretty much right to sleep, but I ended up reading the entire third book, The Girl Who Soared Over Fairyland and split the moon in two. I'm doing great. I read the entire third Fairyland book. It has always been, I think, my least favorite. All of the plots in these books are pretty loose, but this one is even more like convoluted and just not my favorite. This time around, there was something about it that really clicked in each of the books so far. September takes on sort of like a persona to go through her story, or like she identifies in a different way. So in the first book, she's this knight, you know, she's embarking on this journey, and she sets out very purposefully to take on a specific kind of adventure that, you know, like one that she grew up reading about and she knows happens in Fairyland and fairy tales. In the second one, she's a bishop and she has to do things a little sideways. And then in the third one, in order to gain access to Fairyland, this time she's registered as a thief, and she's like dressed up as a thief, as a revolutionary basically. And so she does things according to this because this is what everybody believes that she is. Even though she kind of fights against it, she's like, I'm not really a thief, you know, this is what Fairyland says she is this time. And in contending with being a thief in this book, she's also contending with like growing up and like picking something to be, and how much of that is like predestined for her, like what she's supposed to be versus how much she gets to choose. So all of that was like really lovely in a way that I had not fully, I don't know, processed in my brain. And then the additional thing is that there are like specific passages in this that are about missing your friends and sort of the longing of missing your friends, and even her being there with her friends but still, I don't know, the heartache of like knowing that she's going to have to say goodbye, and like the heartache of in the meantime when you're apart, they've experienced things without her, and it kind of hurts her that they've gone and had adventures without her. And so all of the processing those feelings hits different in December of 2020 when I miss all of my friends. I have a new appreciation for the third book in the Fairyland series, and I finished that. That is book number 4 that I have now finished in this project. And then I've been sitting here for most of the day. I have been doing some cleaning, but mostly I've been reading Addie LaRue, and I've got less than 100 pages left for tonight's 7 p.m. live show. So I'm fine. I'm totally gonna finish this in time with time to spare. I've definitely finished books, like finish the last page and like jump on the live. I'm very proud of myself. It took me 140 pages into this to really be sure that I was enjoying it. That's where it hit the point where I was like, okay, like I see, I'm picking up not only like the vibe and the atmosphere and sort of like the writing, but just like the shape of the story really came into a place where I was both appreciating what was happening in the past and the present. Like I felt compelled to see how it was going to end. I think that this is going to end up being 4 out of 5 stars. I'm not sure how it's going to end, but I feel like I have a sense of like the flavor of the ending, because it's not going to be entirely happy just because of the kind of book that it is. So there are like several ways that this could end. Death is an option. Unhappiness for everybody is an option. So if everything stays on the track where it is, I think this is going to be 4 out of 5 stars, which is kind of surprising to me because I don't like the Schwab books. But it ended up being a pretty pleasant reading experience this morning. And now I'm going to finish this up, keep cleaning, and get ready for the live show. I just finished, and let me preface this by saying that I am hecka emotional, like generally, and only more so in quarantine. But that ending got me a little bit. Like, it wasn't anything that I was not expecting. It was very much in line with the flavor of the ending, but I don't know, something about it just really got me in the feels. I think because actually it was happier than I imagined. Like, it was more hopeful than I imagined. And so seeing that little bit of hope and triumph when I was just expecting despair, I think was a little bit emotional. So literally just finished. I've got to get myself together and decide how I feel about the rest of the book. I'm still feeling 4 stars. Like, I think it has some weaknesses, but obviously it's a story that affected me emotionally. It had some really pretty parts. I want to sit and think a little bit about like Addie as a character and her arc. I've got an hour before the live show. I'm gonna go touch up my makeup. Oh, I'm better now, but can we just take a second right now to admire twinkly lights? Like, so cute, so cute, so cute. Okay, I'm sorry for the harsh light, but I'm better now. And I mean, I'm gonna get all of these feelings out in a live show, and I'm trying to think of whether or not I'll do like a standalone review of this, but I think that 3.5 to 4 stars is the correct rating here for me. I think depending on how much we kind of talk through some of the weaker things and how much that settles, it'll determine, but I think it will be somewhere in that range. I enjoyed it, but I feel like a lot of people will enjoy it. This is something that I think is pretty accessible, but for the few people who trip over some of the same things that I did, but are like not able to brush it off, like this would probably be really infuriating. For one, like the, I guess, magic of the world is not like super explained, and there's like a bunch about like her curse that is just like, that's the way that it is. So if you start really thinking too deeply about all of the mechanics of like what she can and can't do and what the curse has done to her and like its effect and whatnot, you'll probably find a lot to like pull apart. But I've always been a person that if the like magic system is and the book is like upfront about that, I'm totally good to go along with the whatever. And this is not a book where I would want it to like stop and over explain or really go in depth in sort of the curses or the magic system. I was happy for it to be like, it is what it is. Is Addie LaRue not like other girls? So the most glaring example of it to me, like the place where I felt it the most was definitely in the beginning, when she's just like describing her. Not only, it wasn't that she just didn't want to get married, because that is fine. Like, a lot of people don't want to get married, and that's not like necessarily a not like other girls thing, but it was just the way that she presented it. Like, Addie was so special, and like, I don't know. So that I clocked. But then as I sat and like processed it all, it was more a little bit like what is Manic Pixie Dream Girl-esque, in terms of like, you know, she was this great beauty and she was inspiring all these authors, but it didn't go really deep into why all of these artists would find her so inspiring. And I mean, there's an explanation at the ready there. Like, this is a person that has so many years of experience wooing people that it's not even necessarily Addie and her personality and anything that she has to bring to the table, but just like experience of like humankind. And so she's molding herself into all of these people. She is she's like mindfully, she's trying to do this. She's trying to make her mark. So I feel like had that explanation gone a little bit farther of like, Addie is putting on a front in order to inspire as many artists as possible, like that would have been, it would have like totally skirted this like Manic Pixie-esque feeling, and by extension sort of like Addie is special and not like other girls. I'm one of those people that if I like, you know, if it's one of those things where you're like, you gotta give it 150 pages, like that's fine, and I am more willing to put that work in at different times, but I still think that that is a flaw, or it can be a flaw of storytelling. So to me, it is not only that this book was slow, purposefully so, but I think that there were flaws in the construction because it didn't gel together and it didn't mesh together immediately. So that's why it wouldn't be like a 5-star read for me. It would be somewhere in the 4, but I am pleasantly surprised. I didn't expect to like it at all. And I think that there were, like I said, things that I really enjoyed, passages that were really pretty. Some things were overwrought, but there were some things in like explorations of feelings and living and humanity that I thought were like really nice and like the emo stuff that I tend to enjoy. And the ending was just wonderful. I loved this ending for this book. So that was like my entire review. So will she do a standalone? Are you gonna watch my live show? We'll see. Now that the live show is over, we usually play Among Us after the live show and like on the weekends. So everybody took a little break to get something to eat, and then we are sitting down to play Among Us probably for the next like 5 to 6 hours, I'm not gonna lie. So that will be the rest of my night. I'm done reading probably, except for like just a little bit before bed, because that's usually how I wind down. And I'll probably pick up the 4th book in the Fairyland series right before bed. But for the most part, really successful reading day, considering that I read a huge chunk of Addie LaRue and I finished it today and I enjoyed it and I shed some tears over it. And after talking about it more with everybody on the live show, I am going to keep it as a 4-star read. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about that. So dinner, Among Us, bed. I realized that I was like getting ready to go into bed and I hadn't updated today at all. So I've got like pajamas and like smeared makeup, so forgive me, and it's mask makeup anyways. But I was thinking of wrapping up this vlog today and then just starting the week new on Monday tomorrow, but I obviously did not have any other updates today, and I also did not do any reading so far, so I had to run some essential errands, and I got to see my parents today for a little bit, and then I was sitting here and catching up on booktube videos, answering comments, updating Goodreads, just like, you know, internet stuff. I don't know, where does time go? So yeah, and all of that. I watched Deboki's video about checking in with her 2020 goals. If you're not following Deboki, she is like literally one of my favorite people on this in this community, so you should definitely check out her channel because she's just really thoughtful and like one of the smartest people that I know. So I was watching her video and she was checking in with her goals, and I was like, huh, like I had thought about this previously about like, wow, goals went out the window, especially because for the first 3 months I think I did really well with like setting up my reading so that I was meeting the goals that I set up. So I went back and I looked at my goals video for 2020, and it's literally like not as tragic as I thought it would be. There was some things that I did like okay with and some not so well with. It's a little bit depressing, and I'm not in a way that I'm like, I did my best this year and I did as much as I could. There was like, I'm not trying to belittle like any of the survival that I did this year, and honestly the person who made those goals in January of 2020 had no idea, right? Like her vision for her future, like she could not have known what was in store. So even the amount that I was able to accomplish, I'm like impressed with, but I'm sitting here also thinking that I would like maybe there's a last ditch effort in here to meet some of these things and to like, you know, add a few more into the categories where I really wanted to make an effort in reading. That's me like 5 minutes after I watched this video, and I was like, damn, like on a Sunday night. We'll see throughout the rest of these vlogs that I'm planning on doing how much that is incorporated, but I would like to try and read a few more books of the month. I would like to try and read a nonfiction book and a short story collection and a science fiction book. So somewhere in here in these like 30 days and 30 books, I'd like to incorporate those things. Like I said, just a last ditch effort to get like one more in each of those categories. I'm gonna go finish taking off this makeup and head to bed, and I will do a little bit of reading before bed. It is Monday night, and I didn't finish this vlog off yesterday because I was gonna read a little bit more, and I didn't. Now I haven't really read anything today either. I did have Transcendent Kingdom by Ya Jessie next to me all day so that I could take quick little reading breaks, but I got 20 pages in, so not a dent at all. I picked this even though I haven't mentioned it at all this week because I was thinking about those goals again and like book of the month books that I would like to read. This was my September 2020 pick, and it is relatively short, so I was like, that's a good one, and I started it, but I just haven't really made a dent. I did make a dent in a big plate of pasta just now, and so I'm really tired today. I know I say that a lot, but I don't know what it was. Like this morning, a Monday thing, I just woke up and I felt like I hadn't slept enough. So I was just dragging through my work day a little bit, and now that I'm like full and comfy and done with my work day. I'm not really feeling like I thought I could just sit here and probably crank this out like in 2 hours and have another book done. And I also have The Boy Who Lost Fairyland, which is the 4th book in the Fairyland series. I could also probably read that in about 2 hours. So I could add 2 more books to my count tonight. But I think I'm gonna call it. Thank you so much for following me along. If you have read or would like to read any of the books that I mentioned, let's chat about them down in the comments. I would appreciate any support. I know I said in the beginning of this that I didn't think I could do it, but you could feel free to tell me that I can do it. I would appreciate that support. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. Holy cow, I talk so much throughout this whole thing. There's so much footage on the Addie room floor. Now I'm talking too much again. What am I trying to say?